Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating intersection of ideas, and they're all tied together by one very familiar acronym, ACT. On one hand, we've got the high-stakes, super rigorous world of standardized college admissions. But on the other hand, there's this profound psychological framework that's actually designed to help us handle exactly that kind of pressure. So we're going to break both of them down today, giving you the full picture of how we test our knowledge and, maybe more importantly, how we protect our minds along the way.
It's just such an incredible contrast, right? Over on the left, we're looking at number 2 pencils, strict time limits, and national percentiles. You know, that very rigid world of quantifiable data. But then on the right, we shift gears to mindfulness, acceptance, and mental flexibility. It's a much more fluid, deeply personal world of psychological therapy. And as you'll see by the end of this explainer, these two radically different realms actually complement each other in a pretty amazing way.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the logistics of the ACT standardized test, then we'll decode those kind of mysterious score percentiles and navigate the different exam accommodations. After that, we'll pivot, introducing acceptance and commitment therapy, and finally, we'll unpack its 6 core psychological processes.
All right, Section 1, the ACT standardized test, the logistics.
So what's really interesting about the ACT exam right now is how it's actively evolving. I mean, millions of students take this test, and the format is actually shifting to be a bit shorter, with fewer questions. That's a big deal, because it means more time per question, which is specifically designed to let you think clearly with a little less pressure. Now, financially speaking, the base fee for the exam is $68.00. But the cool thing is, the ACT lets you play to your strengths with some optional sections. You can add the science section for just $4, or the writing section for $25.00.
If you're planning ahead for the 2026 cycle, you're going to want to circle these key national test dates: June 13th, July 11th, and September 19th. Knowing these exact dates is absolutely critical, because missing deadlines definitely comes with a cost. For example, if you need to change your test date, let's say you get sick, and by the way, the ACT highly encourages you not to test if you're sick, you'll be hit with a $44 date change fee. So, planning ahead literally pays off.
Moving on to Section 2. Decoding ACT score percentiles by the numbers. Let's get into it.
Because once you take the test, you get a number, right? But what does that number actually mean out in the real world? The crucial thing to understand here is how your composite score translates into a national rank. Obviously, a perfect 36 puts you right in the 100th percentile. But let's look at a composite score of 22. That translates to a 72nd percentile national rank. Basically, if you score a 22, it means you scored higher than 72% of recent high school grads who took the ACT. And that rank right there, that's the primary tool colleges are using to assess and compare applicants.
And this brilliantly illustrates why those percentiles actually matter to you. They help you build a totally realistic college list. You see, colleges generally publish the middle 50% score range of the students they admit. So if your ACT score is hovering near the top of that range, that's a reach school for you, meaning admissions are highly competitive. If your score falls firmly within that middle 50%, boom, that's a match school. And if you're scoring well above their middle 50% range, you've found yourself a safety school, which suggests a much higher likelihood of getting accepted. It really just takes the guesswork right out of your applications.
Section 3, navigating exam accommodations, ensuring fairness.
The ACT has some very specific protocols to make sure the testing environment is equitable for everyone. The system is essentially broken down into 3 distinct tiers. First up, we have ACT approved. Now, these do require professional diagnoses and documentation, but crucially, these scores are fully reportable to colleges and scholarship agencies. Second is locally approved. These are handled right at your own school by the test coordinator, and they have to be completed within standard time. And finally, we've got state-allowed accommodations. These are designed for specific state or district programs, but, and you really want to pay attention to this, scores achieved under these conditions cannot be reported to colleges.
Now, for the students who do secure those ACT-approved accommodations, the options are really extensive and highly customized. Students can use alternate formats like Braille or English audio DVDs, but it also includes some really vital timing adjustments. For instance, examinees might be able to take the test over multiple days, or maybe receive up to 80 extra minutes specifically dedicated to the writing test. It's a robust system, and it's designed to measure a student's actual knowledge, not a disability.
Okay, I want you to just take a quick breath right here. We've just covered a ton of logistics, fees, and those high-pressure percentiles. And let's be real, preparing for a massive standardized exam can create an immense amount of anxiety. So, what if the letters ACT meant something entirely different? What if, instead of being the actual source of your stress, it was the toolkit for handling it?
That brings us to Section 4, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, the other ACT.
So what is this? Well, it's a psychological intervention based on modern behavioral psychology, and it just so happens to be incredibly useful for navigating high-pressure situations, like, say, sitting down for a huge standardized test. The ultimate goal of this therapy isn't just to fix what's broken. Rather, it's about building a highly positive psychological skill called psychological flexibility. This is defined as the ability to fully contact the present moment as a conscious human being, and to either change or persist in your behavior when doing so actually serves your true values. It's really about being awake to right now and acting with purpose, completely regardless of whatever chaos is happening around you.
The core philosophy here completely flips the script on how we usually handle stress. As the source material puts it, ACT attempts to change the way one interacts with or relates to thoughts by creating contexts in which their unhelpful functions are diminished. Traditional approaches might just tell you to, stop feeling anxious about an upcoming exam. But ACT says, well, you can't always control when an anxious thought pops up, but you can absolutely change how you relate to it so that it doesn't end up controlling your behavior.
Section 5. The 6 core processes. Your psychological toolkit.
So how do we actually build this mental resilience? Well, psychological flexibility is established through 6 core processes. They basically fall into 2 groups. The first 4, acceptance, cognitive diffusion, being present, and self as context, make up the mindfulness and acceptance processes. Then, the final 2, values and committed action, along with being present and self as context, make up the commitment and behavior change processes. Let's take a closer dive into a few of these.
Let's look at cognitive diffusion. When you're stressed, your mind might literally scream, "I am going to fail this test." And when you're fused with that thought, you treat it as an absolute, literal reality. But cognitive diffusion techniques teach you to step back. Instead of saying, "I am going to fail," you label the actual process. "I am having the thought that I am going to fail." It instantly creates this mental distance. You might even repeat the thought out loud over and over until it just sounds like a bunch of meaningless syllables, totally stripping away the believability of the panic. Then we have self as context. This is the whole idea of stepping back and becoming the observer of your own experiences. You see, you are not your anxiety. You're simply the context in which the anxiety is happening. By using mindfulness exercises and metaphors, you foster an awareness of your own flow of thoughts and feelings without getting super attached to them. Think of it like this. You are the sky and your thoughts are just the weather passing through.
And that brings us to the ultimate balancing act of the entire system. Over on one side, you have acceptance. That means embracing your internal events, like those physical knots in your stomach right before the exam starts, without wasting all your energy trying to fight them off. On the other side, you have committed action. That means taking concrete steps that actually align with your values, like sitting down to study or deliberately pacing yourself during the exam, even while you're feeling nervous. You accept the feeling, but you commit to the action.
Which brings us to our final thought. Today we looked at a test that measures your academic readiness and a therapy that builds your mental resilience. This beautifully shared acronym reminds us that while we absolutely cannot always control the tests life throws our way, whether that's a college entrance exam or some unexpected personal hurdle, we absolutely have the tools to control our response. So the next time the pressure starts to mount, ask yourself, how will you choose to ACT?